Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another special edition of Top Rope Takes. I'm Jason Marcus alongside my partner here, Willie Thrill, and we have a very exciting episode for you coming your way because I don't know if you guys know this, but it is December and we are rapidly approaching the end of 2024, which means one thing. We got a lot of recap content coming your way, and it starts right now, Will, because 2024 was a hell of a year for wrestling. It was full of a lot of great shows, and we're going to talk about them right now. Will, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Yes, it is the end of the year, which means we are delivering to you our top fives, our top 10 lists of the year. I'm excited. This was a great year for wrestling overall, I must say. And we're going to have top five, top 10 lists all throughout the week. And typically, what we're going to do for those top five and top 10 lists is we're going to come up with our own separate lists. And then Jason's going to merge them together and we're going to have one list. But today, we're doing it a little different. We're
Doing it
doing it
different.
the Willie way.
The Willie way. Let's go.
And the Willie way works like this. We are going to come up with a top five list on the spot right now. We have
Mhm.
no idea what our top five lists are. We have no clue what shows Jason has. He doesn't know what I
I don't
have.
even know what I have. I'm going to figure it out right now.
If we're going to come up with this on the spot, and hopefully we will come to an agreement. We will pick out our top five shows of the year. This is for WWE
Yeah.
and AEW.
Woo.
Unfortunately, we have not kept up with some of the outside promotions as much as I'd love to put maybe some promotions that
Yeah.
I did some commentary for. We're going to stick to WWE and AEW top five lists. And Jason, we're
Yes.
going to start off. I'm going to start off with one that I think we can both agree should be on the top five list.
Okay. Let's hear it.
WrestleMania 40.
I mean, obviously, I think this is the number one consensus draft pick for best show of the year. I really don't think anything has come close. There's something special about the magic of WrestleMania, especially given that this year was that round number 40. It was the culmination of Roman Reigns' for 3.5 year journey as world champion. Cody finished his story. It ushered in the Triple H era and the start of the Rhodes reign. I mean, it is certainly one of the shows that's going to go down in history. And then, of course, selfishly, I was at that event. It was in my backyard in Philadelphia. So not only a massive night for WWE, the pro wrestling world, but for me specifically, always going to hold a special place in my heart for the nostalgia, for spending that time with my family, my dad there in at the link where I go to all the time. So yeah, absolutely best night of the year in wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, this show it feels like it transcended wrestling almost
I
because
agree.
there are people who weren't even wrestling fans who are like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I saw the last 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of that WrestleMania and it was incredible when Cena came out, Undertaker comes out, Seth Rollins in the Shield gear. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it was just insane that main event, but it was also a ton of great undercard stuff. We had Sami Zayn and Gunther putting on a phenomenal match. I even enjoyed the tag match that main evented night one.
Yes.
It was very long, but it was definitely great to see The Rock back in the ring, and I think a lot of people were excited about that. There are even some like sleeper bangers on it. Like
Oh yeah.
people forget LA Knight and AJ Styles kind of had like a way better match than I think people
Mm-hmm.
were expecting. Bailey and Io Sky had a
Yeah.
great match. There's
Rhea
I thought
Becky to
the
open night two.
Rhea Becky as well. And I thought the triple threat was also very fun with Logan Paul,
Oh,
Kevin
for
Owens,
sure.
Randy Orton, with I Show Speed making an appearance. I don't know if
This
you get who that is, but
You know
I
what's
know you're
really
a
you
little
know what's
older.
really funny? I don't know if you guys have picked up on this yet, but I'm a little bit older than Will. So I'm not as well versed in the internet celebrities. So I do remember in the stands at the link when Randy Orton hit the RKO and I show speed. I looked over to my right and I asked this random guy. I was like, "Who the hell is that?" Because I had thought it was KSI because he was on television in the past, and I was like in the nosebleeds. I couldn't tell who it was. But yeah, apparently it's I show speed. I know who he is now, but in the moment I was like, I don't know this man. But yes, this show had everything, right? Like we already talked about the Cody Roman stuff. You mentioned the Sammy Gunther match. Let's not forget this ended Gunther's historic Intercontinental Championship reign. That's another part of history there. Damian Priest cashes in Money in the Bank to win the world title for a second time at WrestleMania ever. Enormous. You had the big pops for people like John Cena, The Undertaker. You have legends like Randy Orton working, even though he's in a triple threat match. But the fact that all the stars aligned for such a great show, there's nothing that's going to top this show. And the other thing I want to bring up with WrestleMania 40, and you kind of mentioned it, there are so many fans who were made because of WrestleMania 40 and who were brought back because of WrestleMania 40. One of my good buddies who I'm watching Monday Night Raw with every week really wasn't into wrestling before the show, but his roommate had it on and he was just casually like observing. And now he's like a huge fan because of the show and he's super into it. We talk every week. He's like, we're basically having like an offline podcast with me and him where he's just like giving wants my thoughts on everything that's happening. So it has made so many fans. It's brought back a lot of fans who were lost in the Vince McMahon era. And yeah, I can't say enough about this WrestleMania, an all timer and definitely the best show of 2024.
Right on. So that puts WrestleMania right up. That's our first confirmed top
Mhm.
five show.
Yeah.
WrestleMania, probably one with a bullet, if I'm being honest. It's definitely
Yes.
going to be tough to have any shows that compete with that. But I'm going to throw another, I think, agreeable show out there that could maybe be the number two with a bullet, and
Okay.
that's SummerSlam from this year. I
Yes.
thought SummerSlam was off the charts. I felt like there was no misses on this show. I really, of course, this was CM Punk's first singles match back.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, definitely takes it up a notch for me. And I enjoyed it maybe more than some other people did as well. But we also had a lot of championship changes, almost another new era starting in WWE with Braun Breaker defeating
Yep.
Sami Zayn, LA Knight defeating Logan Paul, and Nia Jax beating Bayley, who I think may have gone a little stale throughout the year. Nia Jax kind of
Yeah.
made that title feel reinvigorated again, as not only that, but having her pair up with Tiffany Stratton, who had Money in the Bank. I feel like that created this new wave for the SmackDown side in the women's division. And of course, can't forget the return of the OTC Roman
Yes.
Reigns with some banging new theme music, dun, 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 and maybe the loudest ooh wah we've ever heard in WWE history. So I've got to put SummerSlam number two. What about you?
Oh no, for sure. It's definitely up there. You brought up all the main points. The return of Roman Reigns, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's first match and Punk's first match back. You have Cody defending against Solo, kind of capping off that big story from the summer, and then the start of the bloodline civil war, I guess you could call it. Yeah, there's a lot here. I would say if WrestleMania 40 was the show that established the new direction for the top of the card. I would say SummerSlam was the show that established the new direction for the mid card acts, right? Because you got LA Knight finally getting his first championship after being one of the most over superstars for about a year. Braun Breaker getting his Intercontinental Championship, like you had mentioned, Nia Jax winning her world title. Also, we had the Liv Rhea Dom stuff. Remember, this is the show where Dom he was already a heel, but he really, really turned to heel. Maybe it solidified Rhea's babyface turn more than anything else. Um, but you started the Liv Dom stuff. So it's really kicked off a lot of storylines that have carried through the end of the year. So an absolutely great show. I'm curious to see how SummerSlam in 2025 compares because it will be a two-night event similar to how they've been doing WrestleMania in the past. And it could go one of two ways. I think it's going to go more towards WrestleMania, right? Where I really think they're going to just put out another WrestleMania card a couple months later and just do the biggest matches they can. And it's going to have that feel. My concern in 2025 would be like, is it get watered down because they're trying to throw too much in there in two nights? So hopefully I'm gonna remain positive and think it's gonna be continue to get even better. But as far as 2024 goes, SummerSlam absolutely deserves a spot in the top five.
100%. And there's going to be so much room on that 2025 card. And it's at MetLife. We could even be on the card,
Who
Jason. Maybe it's
knows?
me versus you.
Oh
How
man,
about that night one? Me and you. We get things.
yes.
We're the hot opener. I
That's
think
right.
I think the fans would want to see that.
I think,
Uh
listen, if the Costco guys can get on TV, why can't we?
of course. And before anyone else mentions it, Gunther becoming the world heavyweight champion was
Yes.
also a major moment on this show. Definitely took Gunther to that next level. So that was another exciting moment on the show. I think SummerSlam. So we agree we're pretty good right now.
Two
One
for
and
two.
two. Two for
Granted,
two right there.
granted, you
So
took the most obvious ones to start off, but
of course. So maybe I'm gonna throw in a controversial one that I
okay.
personally like, and I know you probably wouldn't want on the list.
Okay.
I gotta say, I enjoyed Survivor Series War Games. Maybe
Oh,
it's a little
come
bit of a
on.
bias. Maybe it's a little bit of bias, but I think I enjoy like a structured card that has some exciting stuff. I know the women's war games wasn't that great, but I think Shinsuke Nakamura winning that US title in dominant fashion was what he needed to reinvigorate his character and maybe
Hmm.
send him to the next level in 2025. Only time will tell. Braun Breaker had an incredible triple threat match, one of my favorite matches of this year. So I'm very
That was great.
excited uh, that that was the case. And I do love these Intercontinental Championship triple threats. They seem to be a no brainer in
Hmm.
the Triple H era. And of course, the men's War Games match I felt like was very story driven, and I enjoyed the stuff with the Bloodline and CM Punk. It's what I feel like when CM Punk joined last year, when he returned to WWE. The one of the main things I wanted to see was him stare down with Roman Reigns and his involvement within the Bloodline. I didn't know how long it would take to get it, but 1 year later, he comes into War Games and competes side by side with the Bloodline to go up
Hmm.
against the new Bloodline. All of that stuff was very captivating to me. So that's why I would put it on my top five. But Jason, let me hear you out. Why shouldn't it be on this top five?
So here's my thing. We know this as wrestling fans, like we like when you go back and think about these shows and the nostalgia kicks in, what are you going to remember from these shows? You're going to remember moments. And for me on this show, there were very few matches or moments that I ever feel like I need to go back and rewatch. I was not a fan of, quite frankly, CM Punk's involvement in this match. I think it's leading somewhere, so I'm not saying it's not for a good reason. But the whole idea of the men's War Games match was about the bloodline. And I really just wanted to see the bloodline versus the bloodline. I think adding CM Punk into the mix kind of just made it a little bit confusing. Like I said, it's going to go somewhere. But I wasn't a huge fan of that. I wanted to just be cleaner. Um, the women, the women are great. This was the worst women's match I've seen in a long time. Let's just call it what it is. It was really, really bad. It was hard to get through, especially when it kicks off the show with that. You kind of lose interest right away. The Shinsuke beating LA Knight was a good surprise, and I think the right call. I'm just personally not high enough on Shinsuke. It's not the worst show I've ever seen, but I certainly think that there's a lot of good competition this year, and I think it was very forgettable.
And that's fair. So, we'll put that to the side for now. Maybe not make the list, but I'm going to hand it over to you, Jason. What show that we have not
Okay.
mentioned yet should absolutely be on this top five list for 2024?
I am glad you asked. So listen, I I think that there's a lot of really good competition here. I would have to say though, I'm going to bring this over to our first AEW show of the episode. And I want to talk about AEW's first show of 2024. You may not remember it because it's been a while, but AEW Revolution 2024, Sting's final match. I thought that alone, you want to talk about moments. That alone is something that I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life. Having him as his sons out there, just the spectacle of it all. I thought that was a great show. Also on that card, you had pull it up right now. I was looking at it earlier, and so
There's
okay,
great
so
matches. Do you want me to throw in some matches that I enjoyed from this show? Because
yeah,
I
please
did
do.
have this on my potential list. I
Yes.
did love Eddie Kingston and Brian Danielson. I thought that,
Hmm.
anytime you get
Yes.
Brian Danielson in a match, especially Eddie Kingston, someone who could really feed off someone like that,
Hmm.
great stuff. Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita. This was Will Ospreay's first match after signing with All Elite Wrestling
Yep.
on a big show. So he had that nice singles match with Takeshita, which was off the charts. I really enjoyed the triple threat for the World Championship
Yes.
when Samoa Joe's choking out Hangman Page, and he sees that Swerve might be able to break it up, and he taps out before Swerve can break it up. I thought that finish was awesome.
Hmm.
So a lot of great stuff on this show, and I really do think at that time when Will Ospreay had just debuted, we had rumors about Okada and Mercedes Moné joining. I felt like AEW was starting to gain some momentum early on in the year, and I think this show gave it high hopes for what 2024 could look like.
Yeah, and a couple other things on this card I want to point out too. You have Christian Cage on this card, really solidifying himself in the patriarchy role with his win over Daniel Garcia. We also have the Blackpool Combat Club, John Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli versus FTR in a banger that went about 13 minutes. Tony Storm and her timeless gimmick kind of just getting its legs with her win over Deanna Perrazzo. So this really was the start of AEW's year in a literal sense, but it really might have been the best thing that they've done all year. To be honest, it was a top notch card from the very start.
Right on. So you know what? I'm going to agree with you. I think it should be on this top five list. Let's put in Revolution, but
Alrighty.
I'm going to counter with another AEW show that I think
Okay.
must be on this top five, and that is AEW All In. The
Yeah.
magic to me still hasn't faded away. And if you want to talk about the best stuff that AEW has done all year, I think All In is definitely one of those moments. When people were sort of kind of on the fence about AEW, AEW pulled out a great show in London, and really, it starts at the top with the main event. The
Yeah.
Bryan Danielson getting another great moment, a moment that we all wanted to see him have in AEW, winning that world championship, putting his career on the line to get this match. Or I guess he put it on the line. He was going to get the match anyway, but the fact they put the career on the line added so much stakes. And there's some great moment when he hit the Busaiku knee on Swerve and he
Mm,
just brushed it off. You know, Swerve's interaction with Bryan Danielson's kid, Birdie. The match was just so
mm,
captivating and such a great moment for Bryan Danielson. There's some other great moments on this show that I'm sure you'll get into, but the other one I want to point out is the Casino Gauntlet for that title shot. I
yeah.
did think the finish was kind of whatever, but I just thought the momentum beforehand, getting the return of Nigel McGuinness, the debut of Ricochet, Zack Sabre Jr. coming out. There was a lot of fun stuff in that Casino Gauntlet and a lot of fun interactions that I really enjoyed. You had it start with Orange Cassidy and Okada, and I thought that was another great little moment that they had.
Kind
Hangman in the match, just being Hangman, getting,
of-
solidifying himself as just this badass who, doesn't care about anything. He just wants to win to maybe get a shot at Swerve, who had the championship at the time.
Osprey and
Uh,
MJF.
Osprey and MJF was another great moment. So, yeah, what do you think about All In? Does it deserve to be on this top five for you?
It's on my top five. So right now, I think we've hit either three or four. Yeah, we've talked about four of my top five. So that fifth spot is might be a little contentious, but this is absolutely in it. I agree with you. I again back to the whole moments make memories thing. The Bryan Danielson match defeating Swerve to end his reign and start finally give Bryan Danielson his run as AEW World Champion for as short lived as it was. We'll always have that moment. I actually thought Jack Perry and Darby Allin in a coffin match was sneaky good. Maybe a lot of people may not remember that, but I always enjoy a good coffin match. There's something we need to talk about here. Out of the four pay per views that we've talked about so far, three of them have been stadium shows. Does the stadium make the show, or are they just front loading? Like, what do you think's the cause here? I think actually the stadium adds a lot to the atmosphere and the ambiance.
I think it's both. I think it's the stadium adds to the show, but obviously
Mhm.
with both companies, you want to have the biggest matches
Yeah,
at the stadium show because you want to try to fill out those seats. You're not going to have
right.
any, sleeper matches on the show uh because you don't want to leave room for like, oh man, we could have gotten this big match, but instead we
Yeah,
got kind of a lackluster card.
yeah.
So I think in both ways, the stadium makes the show and the show itself, brings in the crowd that comes to the stadium. So I mean, that's a good point. Like maybe the stadium shows do have an advantage over some of the other shows, but I do think there's been some, stadium shows that haven't been that great,
Right.
this year, and maybe you'll bring it up and I'll shut it down for any for that fifth spot. But let's get
Yeah.
to that fifth spot because so far we agree WrestleMania 40,
Yeah.
SummerSlam, uh, Revolution, All In. That's our
Yes.
four. We've only disagreed on one, so we have this fifth spot. I feel like there might be some contention here, but I'm gonna let you take the lead here. Give us what you think should be the fifth spot
Okay.
on this top five list for 2024 WWE AEW shows. Jason Marcus.
All right. So just to recap, in my number one position, WrestleMania 40. In my number two position, I actually do have AEW All In over Revolution. Number three, I had SummerSlam. Four, I had AEW Revolution. And in my five spot, I went with Money in the Bank 2024. I thought this was a really fun show, highlighted by it was basically the pay per view debut of Solo's new bloodline taking on Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. We also saw Tiffany Stratton win Money in the Bank. We saw Damian Priest versus Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. We have Sami Zayn defeating Braun Breaker to win the Intercontinental Championship or defend the Intercontinental Championship in a match that Will and I infamously both got wrong. And then we had Drew McIntyre winning Money in the Bank earlier and try to cash it in and failed. So it set up a lot. I just thought I love a good Money in the Bank match. I think it had all your big stars aside from maybe a Roman Reigns. The Tiffany Stratton Money in the Bank was the right call. I thought the Drew McIntyre winning and cashing in that night, but only to fail, was a nice story beat. That we had this surprise in Sammy and Braun. So I thought this match had a lot, or this card had a lot.
Okay, that's interesting. I Money in the Bank was kind of on the fence for me. I kind of figured you would bring it up, but I just feel like because Roman didn't return on the show, it
Yeah.
kind of had like a flat ending,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
I agree with
We
that.
kind of figured that Bloodline would win to give Solo the match at the end there. I think a lot of people were also down on Drew winning and then immediately cashing in. I didn't mind it because it did drive a story forward, but at the
Right.
same time, I understand people's frustrations of how they would just. I'd rather put an end to the same night cash-ins because so done so often
Yeah.
now. It was cool when it first happened, the first few times it happened, but now it seems to happen every year at Money in the Bank.
Yes.
So I feel like that's why people were so down on the show. They wanted to see two people walk out with their briefcases still intact, and that just wasn't the case. I will give you that the women's match was great, and I did enjoy Sami Zayn beating Braun Breaker, but I still don't really understand why Braun didn't just win at
Yeah.
the get go. Um, I guess you want to keep Sami Zayn strong, but at the end of the day, he just lost to Drew McIntyre, which, by the way, Saturday night's main event did not make our top five.
No.
If
Unfortunately.
for all those people that were hoping for it. Um, Here's the thing. I would not necessarily argue with Money in the Bank being the fifth spot if you didn't, trash my Survivor Series War Games pick. So I actually am going to veto this. I am going to
Okay.
say that no match on that card was better than Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, which was on AEW Dynasty, which I
Wow. Okay.
had in my top five. And there's a few reasons why. It wasn't just that match. It was also the crowning of Swerve Strickland becoming the
Yep.
world champion at AEW, which I feel like was a huge moment for them. Outside
Mm-hmm.
of the Danielson moment, Swerve getting that title was big. And I feel like a lot of people were very happy for him and enjoyed AEW. It was also the return of the scapegoat, Jack Perry,
Mm.
who helped the Young Bucks retain their titles that they, or no, it wasn't retained. It was the vacant titles at the time because Sting and Darby Allin did retain their titles at Revolution. Titles were vacated, and Young Bucks were able to win those titles, defeating
Okada Pac.
FTR. I also, yeah, Okada Pac was, yeah, definitely up there. I thought this was a solid show for AEW. Maybe not one of their best whole cards, but when you have Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson, that is kind of the selling point for me. And
Mm-hmm.
spoiler, might end up on top matches of 2024.
Ooh.
We'll have to see, but yeah, I think I would put AEW Dynasty slightly ahead of Money in the Bank just for that reason. But what do you say about that?
Listen, it's hard to argue with that card, with those moments that you said. So it's definitely in contention for me. I think right now we got to put it in the maybe pile. Kind of maybe talk through some other ones, see if I change my mind. But you certainly make a compelling case, Will. I will give you that.
All right. Well, do you have any other, Money in the Bank was number five. Is there one that you think we might, be closer on agreeing on that we have not mentioned yet?
There is a card that we haven't mentioned yet that I think really deserves some recognition at the end of the year, and that is Backlash France. You want to talk about a hot crowd, not even just a crowd that is different than and maybe any other crowd we've ever seen in pro wrestling. The enthusiasm, the chants, they really made the show as much as the wrestlers made the show. But on top of the crowd, you had Cody Rhodes defending AJ against AJ Styles, Cody's first defense as champion after WrestleMania. You also had Damian Priest defending against Jey Uso on this card. You had the Bloodline there against Kevin and Randy. So you had some big stars there. You had some big moments, a historic crowd. Was it the best in ring? No, but when you think about shows from this year, I think it'd be hard pressed to think of a pay per view that is more recognizable than this one.
Yeah, no, I'm actually in 100% agreeing with you. If you just looked at the match card alone, you'd probably be like, this has no business being anywhere near top five. But it's really about the crowd. And you
Yeah,
mentioned it before. It's about what are moments that you would go back to and watch. And I
yeah,
think for the rest of time, we're gonna see that close up of AJ Styles with the camera bouncing because of how
yeah.
loud France was doing that. Yeah, no, no. I don't even know what they were saying, but I
Yeah,
just that chant is awesome. I don't even know any of the words, but I could do that chant for the rest of time. I hope we can adopt that chant somehow for AJ Styles.
not to
But
mention, this was
yeah,
also the night where the Fireflies came out for Jey Uso's entrance, which have now become a staple. So this really did wonders for Jey Uso's career. And I actually, you would argue, brought him into the next level because he was he was a mid card act at WrestleMania 40. Let's be very clear. He's main event Jey Uso after Backlash France.
it's a good point. I feel like the reactions got stronger and stronger, and then everyone doing the
Mm,
Firefly,
mm,
doing the up down in sync. I mean, people were doing that anyway beforehand, but I feel like people really got behind Jey Uso, and it was almost like Jey Uso showing WWE like this is what
yeah.
me at maximum potential looks like for the crowd. The crowd being super hot for Jey Uso. So you know what? I'm gonna say right here. I'm gonna say Backlash France gets the 5 spot.
Oh
Do you
wow. All right.
agree? You think Backlash? I think it's the one that we've been the closest to agreeing on for the 5 spot. It was on my like outside picks. Potentially, it's like my 6 or 7, but I'm willing
Yeah.
to bump it up and move Dynasty down if you're willing to move Money in the Bank
You
down
know what's so
for
funny though?
Backlash France.
You know what's so funny? I will cede Money in the Bank, but you've really got me thinking about Dynasty. So I'm not sure between
Oh, okay. Wait
Dynasty
a
and
sec.
Backlash France who I want to put up there. But I think this the people deserve one more, at least one more for us to talk about here. Let's
Okay.
put that one in the maybe pile. Let's talk about another show on this card. Let's talk about Bad Blood. Let's talk about Hell in a Cell, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Let's talk about you have Cody teaming up with Roman Reigns to go against the new Bloodline. Certainly is probably going to be up there for a lot of people's match of the year between Hell in a Cell. But what did you think about Bad Blood 2024 as a whole?
Yeah, this is one that is I could compare it to Dynasty in that there's one major match that sticks out above the rest. But to me, it's kind of the other side of the coin where this is to me is a one match card.
Yeah,
Outside of the one match, like I really did not enjoy Nia Jackson Bailey. I thought that was kind of a throwaway match. I thought Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan was an absolute mess. You want to talk about bad women's
yeah.
matches? I think that one could be up there for one of the worst women's matches of the
The
year.
finish hurts though.
Um, Damian Priest and Finn Balor was another one that is kind of just felt like they need to get out of the way, but yet they're still coming back to it. I don't know. It was weird. I thought Damian Priest would defeat Finn Balor and just move on. That isn't the case. So that makes this match honestly even worse for me. Just the context of it. And Cody and Roman versus the Bloodline was fun, but does this show even get in the conversation without that Rock return? Obviously, that's going to be the moment that's played
Yeah.
over and over again. But if you don't have the Rock return, I think people are disappointed and think the show is just kind of CM Punk versus Drew, and that's it. Maybe if they had switched it around, if Rock wasn't going to return, maybe they switched the card and people would think highly of it because CM Punk, Drew McIntyre should have been the main event. And if it was the main event, maybe, it'd be a different discussion. But after seeing The Rock return and then not show up for the rest of the year,
Yeah, it
it
was
felt
weird.
like it was a desperate move to just be like, "Oh, Rock's still here. I
Right.
swear." Like it was, it's
He was
like,
just there and he was like, I'm going to come out if I'm here.
yeah. So maybe if there's some resolve, maybe in retrospect, the show gets a better ranking in my mind. But I'm gonna say no way this is ending up on my
Okay.
top 5 list.
All righty. I have to agree with you there, but I had to play devil's advocate. All right, gotta
I
throw it out
appreciate
there.
it. Yeah, 100%.
Is there any other match or pay per view from this year that you feel like is worth consideration? Will?
It's tough. The thing is, I really don't like the Saudi shows, but I
Yeah.
did think that King and Queen of the Ring wasn't terrible. I think it should
Mhm.
get some acknowledgement because they brought back an interesting concept and added a stipulation to it. And I felt like it was a Gunther's step up into the main event scene. I thought Cody and Logan Paul kind of had like a fun little match for the title. And of course, you had Liv Morgan defeating Becky Lynch, and we get the first inkling of the Liv Dominic relationship forming.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, a really fun triple threat with Sami Zayn, Chad Gable, and Bronson Reed. Like a lot of people will forget that match,
Mhm.
but if you go back, that's a fun match that they had for the title. So honestly, it's a bit of a sleeper pay-per-view. I would kind of put it on the outside,
Yeah.
but I think it should get some acknowledgement as like a cool concept that WWE brought back this year and that
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to future shows of.
Yes. I mean, I agree. I thought it was a good show. The other one I want to bring up before we decide on our fifth spot here, I do think it's outside, but I think in for consideration is AEW All Out. You had Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland in the lights out steel cage. You have Bryan Danielson defending against Jack Perry. You have Okada win a fatal four way for the Continental Championship. Osprey and Pac went 20 minutes. Young Bucks versus BCC, MJF, and Daniel Garcia. So a lot on this show. I think the Will Ospreay swerve is the one people are gonna talk about and remember the most from it. But certainly right after All In, it was a good showing from AEW.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw out because I feel like we've kind of been down on the women
Mm-hmm.
this show. I don't want that to be our narrative. We love the women's wrestling, and I'm gonna show right here because Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale had a fantastic street fight
Mm-hmm.
on this show. So I thought that was good. Monet and Cheetah was all right, but I feel like Statlander and Willow Nightingale might be one of the best women's matches we saw from a major company all year.
Absolutely.
Definitely something that should be talked about. And I'm glad you brought that up because All Out was one of those ones that I was kind of like on the fence about. It definitely was a conversation starter, especially with the main event. There's a lot of controversy with Hangman injecting
Yeah.
Swerve with a needle and then hitting him over the head with a chair. So I think that kind of overshadowed how great this show was.
Do people forget Nick Cage? Nick Gage used a pizza cutter on Chris Jericho and then went to a
Yeah, with the
Domino's Domino's
that was
commercial.
awesome.
You know
The
what I mean? Like they
Dominoes or
keep
Little
doing that.
Caesars, I forget what it was,
Yeah.
but
I remember in 2019, like one of the very first AEW shows ever, Moxley and Kenny Omega had like a barbed wire something match or whatever. Like AEW's been doing that forever. They're pushing the lines.
yeah, I would say that would be the case. But I'm just saying when this
Yeah.
show happened, I think that was the conversation. I think
Yeah, I see what
looking
you're saying.
back, honestly, you might be changing my mind here because I'm looking at this card. It's a very good card, and it's one that definitely got overshadowed. So, I put it right up there with Dyna. Like, I might even prefer this over because I do like Osprey. I think Osprey and Danielson's better than Osprey and Pac, but Osprey and Pac was right up there.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely one of the better Will Osprey matches we saw all year. But you could really say that about a lot of the Will Osprey matches we saw
Mhm.
this year. So you might be swaying me here. Might be swaying me. I was thinking we were going to agree on Backlash.
Yeah.
But what is your final pick? We got
Okay.
Dynasty, we got All Out, and we got Backlash Friends. Out of those three, what should get the 5 spot here?
Okay. So this is my thoughts. I think AEW All Out had the most memorable main event. Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland for Lights Out to end their feud for now. I thought Backlash France had the most memorable crowd and ambiance of the three. But I think AEW Dynasty was the best combination of the three of them. I think there was a lot of big moments, specifically Swerve being crowned the first black champion in AEW history, Osprey's pay per view debut in a hell of a match against Danielson. You talked about it already, but you've convinced me, and I do think that deserves a spot in the top
All right. Well, you know what? It was my pick. So I'm going to agree with you,
five.
Jason.
There you
I
go.
think, yeah, we put our big, massive wrestling brains together and we've come
Yeah,
up with our top 5 WrestleMania 40,
top
SummerSlam,
seven if we're
All
being real.
In, Revolution, and Dynasty with some honorable mentions to Backlash, France,
Yeah,
and All Out. So you know what? I like that list. I'm going to keep that list. And that is our top 5
lock it in.
WWE AEW shows of 2024. Stay tuned, guys, because we're going to have top 5 lists all throughout the week. Tomorrow, we're going to have top five matches of 2024 for WWE AEW. Then Thursday, we're going to come in with top 10 women's wrestlers. And then Friday, top 10 men's wrestlers of
Yeah,
2024. And of course, we're going to do it differently. We're going to have our predetermined list come together, and Jason's going to read it off.
that's
We're
right.
going to discuss. And if any of my guys get left off, I will be arguing with
No,
you
that's
about
not how
why
it's
they were
going to
on the
work.
list.
It's going to be my list completely.
All right. He's going to hijack the list, everyone. But thank you
No, I would
guys
do it.
for watching. Jason, do you have anything you want to leave the fans with?
Yeah, real quick, I do just want to say I know that Will and I are a little critical of AEW for their week to week stuff, just because we love it. But I think if anything, this episode has showed that AEW, for all their shortcomings, man, they put on a hell of a pay per view. Like that is their bread and butter. They know how to put on the big show. And you see that here. They are in three of our top five and four of our top seven. So kudos to AEW for keep doing what they're doing because when it comes to pay per view, I think they're king.
Yeah, 100%. And we do praise WWE a lot for their week to week shows. But really, I think if anything, this list shows that WWE might want to start adding, not saving the big
Mhm.
matches for their big shows. Maybe they want to add a little more substance
Yes,
to their B shows in quotations. But yeah, but I think equally is it we're an equal opportunity show.
that's
We
right.
we will shout out the good stuff no matter what.
We call it as we see it.
And 100%. And so I think equally WWE and AEW had their strengths this year, and that was shown through our list. A good mix of the two.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below if we missed any shows from this year that you were big fans of. We want to hear all about it from you guys. We've got more 2024 recap content you're coming your way, as Will mentioned. So stay tuned for that. Please give us a subscribe if you like this content. Tell your friends, share it. We love wrestling. We know you do too. And we're just here to share that love. So thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you all next time.
Peace.